Welcome to the Science of CX podcast. My name is Steve Pappas, a former serial entrepreneur turned CX obsessed expert. And each week we bring you an inspiring message and insight into how customer experience can catapult your business to soar, grow, and accelerate beyond what you thought was possible. We seek out experts to interview and help you on your journey to CX in the science of CX. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Science of CX. And as I've told you before, we look everywhere to find the best experts to bring you, to give you the valuable morsels of information around customer experience and all things customer. And today is absolutely no exception. We have one of the biggest names in customer experience with us, and her name is Jeanne Bliss. Jeanne, welcome to the show today.
Hi, Steve. Gosh, it's so good to hear your voice and to be with you.
Thanks. And of course, we have Angela, my co-host. Angela, are you there?
I am, Steve. I am really excited to meet Jeanne today. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot to cover. So everyone, strap yourselves in, get that cup of coffee, because there's going to be a lot of information coming your way. But first, as always, let me tell you a little bit about Jeanne, just so that everybody has kind of a level set and understands exactly what Jeanne has done and maybe understands where all the information is coming from. So Jeanne Bliss helps companies and people become the best version of themselves. She guides them to define, build, and live the behaviors and actions that will fuse customers to them and ultimately create deep and memorable relationships. Creating these deeper relationships has been Jeanne's singular mission for over 35 years. Jeanne is often referred to as the godmother of customer experience and one of the foremost experts on customer-centric leadership, and she's pioneered the role of Chief Customer Officer, holding the first ever CCO roles at Land's End, Microsoft, Coldwell Banker, and Allstate. Jeanne is the founder and president of Customer Bliss, and her website is www.customerbliss.com, and she's the co-founder of the Customer Experience Professionals Association, and she's delivered more than 2,000 speeches and workshops on all aspects of what we're going to be talking about. She's also a best-selling author, having authored Chief Customer Officer 2.0. Would you do that to your mother? And we're lucky to have her here today. Finding time in Jeanne's busy schedule is always tough, but Jeanne, maybe we could jump right into it. I've got a ton of questions for you, but we'll try to categorize them a little bit and keep us all on track. So you talk about humanity in business, and I know that's something that's very personal to you and comes from the heart. Can you give our listeners a little more information about what you mean by humanity in business?
Sure, thanks. And hi, Steve. Hi, Angela. I didn't get a chance to say hi to you. So glad you're with us today. This is for me, when I think about customer experience, at the end of the day, what it really is about leadership. It's choosing how you will and will not grow, how you will guide an organization, and how you'll earn the right to grow by building what I call congruence of heart and habit. Heart meaning how we were raised, what we know is right, the non-negotiables of what you will and will not do to grow, and habit meaning that you will enable your people to live in that manner. Humanity and business and customer experience intersect because this is about becoming an elevated company in the marketplace. Anybody can sell a boat, but it's how you do it. It's the manner in which you give away no strings attached information, the path that you take in starting with your customers' goals, the things you won't do to sell that boat, the things you will do to enable your people to rise, and the manner in which you communicate by ripping off the corporate veneer and talking like humans one-to-one. And when you do that, but you not only do it once in a while, but your entire leadership team acts that way, you show up as a different kind of company. At Land's End, where I started my long, long journey, we used to say, based on this return, how would we be defined as people? Based on this shipping box, who would we be described as? What would our attributes be? And that's what is missing, honestly, in over 90% of these transformations, is this clarity of not only knowing what you will be, but building it and then living it. That's what I mean by humanity in business.
Perfect. Well, that I couldn't agree more. Now, maybe let's touch upon the fact that not only is humanity in business important, but you talk a lot in your presentations and your workshops about the foundation of experience is memory creation. And I know I talk about a lot of times making things memorable as well as remarkable, but the foundation of experience being memory creation. Tell us more about that.
You bet. Right now is a perfect example. We are living in a time in our life that will define all of our lives. And the memory of how we were treated by an organization and its people will stick with us. There's some great research that I'm sure you know of, Steve, the peak end rule. And really, at the end of the day, customers remember not only what you did for them, but three things. Did you do what you said you were going to do? Did you improve my life? And how did you make me feel? Transactionally, we sometimes go after those things independently, but it's the accumulation of those memories that create an impression, again, that defines your brand, that defines your people, and transcends price and what you sell. And really, the memory of what you do and how you do it defines the currency and creates the currency of your brand. And that's why when the companies that really are working on this and making headway and growing as a result of this work, they recognize that you have to create a blend of how people do things, who will do things, how we'll enable them with technology, but starting with the negative emotion and recognizing that it's our responsibility to turn it to a positive, because both of those things carry weight from a memory standpoint. And unless you recognize that and apply the science in your operation and in how you lead, you have what I call an it depends experience, Steve and Angela. It depends on who answers the phone. It depends on the product you're selling. And then you leave your growth to chance.
Interesting. So that is the art and the science?
Yeah, it's both an art and a science. It's the art comes into play by tickling out and understanding, the side of it, which is what are the emotions people having? What are they really trying to accomplish? What's interesting is that the binary way of asking a customer, do you want a red cup or a blue cup, in a survey or a focus group, or a survey that says, how did we do in selling you your product, only gets into the one dimension and in the rear view mirror view of understanding how you did. And we spend lots of money based on that singular view or that binary view. The art of it is in the asking of the questions and in the understanding the life to get into the higher purpose, deeper meaning things that will truly elevate you. So, for example, what we're doing with clients now, especially in a COVID world, is goal mapping, not journey mapping, because journey mapping often is about defining our processes and what we want to accomplish or get from customers. Goal mapping tickles out how they're feeling, what they need, what they aspire to, and it puts you on a higher plane, a different plane, to then say, okay, if this is what we need to deliver so that people can reflect back and say, as a result of working with us, did my life improve? Okay, how do we build that? How do we live that? How do we ensure that? And so the art is getting to even understanding. It's the art of understanding and the science of building it and living it.
Perfect. That's great. So maybe we could get into one of the other areas that you've talked about, and I've listened to you many times on. But for our listeners, you talk about the 5 leadership steps for living the DNA of experience. Maybe we could go through those 5 steps if you don't mind.
Sure. And are you referring to, just to clarify, the 5 competencies in the CCO book or the mom book steps?
The CCO book.
Okay, thanks. For some dumb reason, the mom book is 5 too. I must have a thing about 5. So the 5 competencies, it's fascinating because so much of customer experience sometimes feels like, problem solving or whack-a-moling. And really what this should be is that, as I mentioned, a cadence for how you lead and how you take the customer off the spreadsheet, and how you focus and prioritize on customers' lives and the most important things in customers' lives that, again, they need to attribute to you to earn the right to grow, to earn that memory. And the 5 competencies give you what I call that engine that feels operational, and leaders can glom onto it as an ongoing way to drive their growth. Competency 1 is honoring and managing customers as assets of the business. A lot of times we look at what we're selling, the widgets, the product, the service, the SaaS, etc., and that's how we declare success. What we really need to do instead is look at, are we earning the right to grow? Are we keeping more customers than we lost or not? And the sentence is, as a result of the experience, did we all, this isn't a sales number, earn the right to grow? And this is really math. As a result of the experience we delivered, we brought in X number of new customers. Great. We're good at acquisition. But in that same year, quarter, month, here's how many we lost, both in volume and value. And the net customer asset growth or loss is this. What I also encourage people to do is look at the whole number, not a retention rate, because retention rate will give you a false positive. And you want people to think of it as a whole number, because you want to start imagining humans. And also, I'm Italian, and I want you to get what I call agita, sick in the belly, about knowing people are leaving.
Right.
Competency 2 then moves that leadership worry, concern to say, okay, why? And that's the goal map. It's really your shopping mall map that gives you a constant, continuous frame for applying the science of the why. So let's now traverse customers' goals that we should be a part of helping them achieve and understand each of these. What we know, Steve and Angela, is that the repetition of behavior is what starts to embed this inside of organizations. And so if the frame shifts, or every silo has their own frame, every silo has their own frame, you won't have a united way to do this. So now, goal by goal, let's traverse. Competency 3 is the customer listening, both aided that we ask for and unaided that customers gift us every day, organized into each of these goals to create robustness around what's happening with the customer. And it's the amalgamation of all your listening, or your most potent listening, to say, for example, in stage 3 of, let's say, a hospital journey or a hospital goal of leaving home or leaving the hospital with everything, I'm clean and I know what to do, whatever, et cetera, whatever the goal might be. Here's our social media. Here's information we got from customers as they called in and let us know. We sent you off to try to do all the paperwork. How did that do? Here's the verbatims. Here's what we heard from our nurses and our doctors and our social workers. And then finally, here's the survey. And what that does is it amalgamates multiple sources to tell a clear and an undisputed conversation and story about what happened in its totality, so you can understand and focus as a company versus every silo cherry picking their own thing. The 4th competency is your early warning system. The operational KPIs, key performance indicators, or metrics that you should care about with as much rigor as you care about sales numbers, so you know before your customers start telling you in surveys or complaints where you've fallen off the rails. So, for example, there's a great place here in Seattle called the Seattle Spine Clinic, and they actually measure the number of days missed from work that people miss because they have to go through the rigmarole of getting their back fixed. And they measure the number of reduced MRIs that they have been able to achieve because their diagnostics and their therapies get rid of a lot of the redundancy that currently exists inside of healthcare. But if you're measuring the wrong things, your early warning indicators are potentially going to tell you you're either doing fine or you're measuring the things that aren't really going to matter to customers. The fifth competency is one company united. It's the leadership language, it's behavior, and it's doing some simple things like going across those goals and bringing your employees in and asking them what they need or what's getting in the way. It's starting a kill a simple rule movement to let them identify those things fearlessly. And then it's building a customer room, virtually or not, where on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, you walk the life of the customer. You understand the priorities as a leadership team and throughout the organization. You pick the few things. You create agile groups to start working on them, and you give them accountability. But you walk the life, and the repetition of walking the life changes the language of the business, changes how leaders lead, how you drive accountability to the business, and eventually elevates you as a different kind of company in the world.
I think one place that I see so many companies getting tripped up is between competencies 3 and 4. In 4, they have chosen the wrong things to measure, and they're celebrating their successes because everything they're measuring is doing fantastically. Then they start to get that feedback in competency 3 from the customer that they're not doing a great job, and they cannot wrap their heads around what went wrong. They just aren't listening to what's important to the customer, and so they're measuring the wrong thing.
Well, you're so right, and that goes all the way back to the art, because we're not doing the hard listening to really understand what's important. It's fascinating. I've been encouraging people in this time to go back and do listening sessions with customers to say, what are your goals now? And recalibrate. The other thing is if you don't understand the goals, even the survey questions are wrong, right? So, and then the other thing that's fascinating about what you just said is that all of this work has to be addressed with the underbelly of the organization, the working of how we have learned to earn our reward, our successes, our bonuses is all around inadvertently siphoned off silo metrics that we can control. And those red, yellow, and green dots are earned by independent metrics versus when customers see value, it's the result of many parts of the company coming together. And that means rethinking not only the independent silo metrics, but starting with what the team metrics need to be, that then can be pushed into individual metrics. And companies, to your point, don't do that hard work. Art and science don't blend.
Great. Well, I'm going to have to take a quick break there. Jeanne, this has been very interesting, but we need to do some advertising for our sponsor. We'll be right back.
Panviva has 25 years of empowering customer service, and we have deep expertise in how people actually use information, from our roots in learning and performance. We offer accurate, consistent information on demand to every channel, most relevant knowledge at your people's exact moment of need, integrated, streamlined internal processes, systems that deliver memorable and remarkable customer experiences that boost customer attention and loyalty every time, and knowledge that extends across your entire digital landscape. To learn more, visit Panviva at www.panviva.com.
And we're back. We're talking today with Jeanne Bliss, and we're covering an awful lot of material, so we hope you're taking notes out there, and you're going to be able to incorporate some of these things that Jeanne has been talking about. Jeanne, I've got a follow-up question to what we were just talking about, is now how do businesses start in a particular department, and how does that expand to the enterprise? Because a lot of times a department might say, hey, we've got an initiative and we want to do this around customer experience, but they don't necessarily have all of their peers in line yet. And they're starting with the small win or the quick win versus going with the big bang. Is that possible to become infectious to an organization and start from a departmental level?
Well, it's such a great question. But what you're going to have inside of an organization is departmental objectives and goals, and then company-wide goals. I think it becomes a challenge when they don't feed into one another. Part of the work that I think that if it's done right, the discipline of customer experience does is that it starts with the whole and then gives perspective on the relationship that the silos have to feed into the whole. But even if you are trying to run a great operation from a customer-driven standpoint, you can do great work by understanding and doing the art and science there. So let's say you're running a call center, or you're running the returns operation. You need to build a goal map of your operation and apply all of those things. Now, you don't want to build your own listening system separate. This is where we get in trouble when we build multiple sources of different things. I had a client, for example, who they had gone through all the goal mapping, and then another part of the company decided, no, they wanted to do their own, and this is where it gets a little crazy when we don't have, a united approach to how to do the work.
Right. Well, that leads me into my next question. You've often said, check your silo at the door. Yep. So maybe we could elaborate on the silos a little bit as to, how does that affect the overall health of the organization too?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, one of the things that's really important when I bring C-suite leaders together is to bring them together to recognize that we need to evaluate the one company experience from the customer's point of view, what they're seeing, feeling, experiencing, remembering about how they were treated and what they achieved. And one of the things that we often will do is we'll put the goal map together. And even that is a little bit of what I call a Vulcan mind meld to understand that we're not going to name goals by silos. It's not a service and parts experience. It's a keep me functioning experience or whatever it is. And one of the first things we do is we will bring in customers or clients or have them read quotes from customers and rate the reliability of how the company pulls together to help the customer achieve that goal. Now, the normal reaction is to look into that goal and say, gosh, we're working really hard. Our people are taking the hill and they're solving the problems and they're tired and they're working. Well, we're not rating how hard we're working or how good we are, because we are good and we are working hard. We have to check our ego and our silo at the door and rate how, as one company, we are delivering reliability all the time, no matter who, no matter where, no matter when, no matter what project. And that's why the first chapter of the CCO 2.0 book is about uniting the C-suite. If that uniting doesn't occur, forevermore, the segmentation of the business proliferates silo by silo.
Interesting. And so what could potentially happen is unknowingly there could be saboteurs in the mix.
Yeah. And again, I think that goes back to the underbelly of how you're paid, how you get your raises, where you get your bonuses, and traditionally how you've been conditioned to get what you need and to achieve and ascend. And so you're going to protect that, right? And people are proud of the independent work they've done. And that's why so much of this needs the CEO and the board or the C-suite to make it okay to disassemble and then reassemble what means, what score is, what success is, and help people understand the new way of achieving success. And that's a huge amount of change management, a lot of which doesn't occur in the absence of that, our leaders get a false positive because we look at the list of projects and say, man, we said last year this was the year of the customer, or we are a customer-driven organization, and now we have 100 projects that have customer focus in them or customer experience in them. Again, really great, but 5 of them may all be trying to work on the same thing unintentionally or have cross purposes unintentionally. And so the work of uniting has to occur. And it's not about, whack-a-moling problems individually, but understanding the bigger goals and working toward those. And that's where this opportunity exists in this work.
So just a quick question, on the side, given the pandemic and the COVID has accelerated a lot of people's thinking around technology, a lot of change has been happening. We're living in change pretty much on a daily basis, and we're getting through change that maybe we never thought we could get through. So all the workers are, amazingly resilient.
That's
so
right.
how is that factoring? Do you see trends where maybe things are accelerating towards more customer centricity because of the fact that people are going through and dealing with change now that they didn't even know they could deal with before?
Well, yes. In fact, so much of what I've been talking about, I've been interviewing people on my LinkedIn Live, et cetera, is that it's paradoxically given us an opportunity to do 2 things. One, to wire our humanity into our business, because we're seeing leaders in a very real and human way on their couches, rip the corporate veneer off, talk to their people in a brutally honest way about the safety of the organization, its financial steps, get back to customers to find out the 2 or 3 things to work out versus the 20,000 or whatever it is, or 20 or whatever. And we're silo smashing. We're boundary smashing, and we're level smashing. And we are in a swift way shifting over to the 2 or 3 most important things. And those are so many of the behavioral things that I just talked about, those underbelly things that we haven't been able to achieve. And COVID has taught us that we can. And not only we can do it when we're not in the same room with each other. And so the opportunity is to make sure we hold on to those behaviors and make them be a part of the way we lead moving forward.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about one of your other books, but tell us a little more about Make Mom Proud. That's a fascinating title for me, and it's kind of an interesting. Well, I was an only child, so I always wanted to make Mom proud because my dad died when I was 4, so it was just Mom and I. So making Mom proud, and it's kind of funny because I know you guys can't see, but to the right of my monitor is a picture of my mom that, passed 17 years ago. So I think of her every day.
That's right.
So what's Make Mom Proud about?
Sure. And the book's called Would You Do That to Your Mother? If that's okay, if I could mention that. And the big part of it throughout, the theme of it is Make Mom Proud. The reason I wrote that book was because customer experience had become so complicated and people didn't know where to start. And again, we were focusing on the mechanics versus the meaning of the work. And the whole point of that is go back to what you already know, which is how to behave, how to lead, what the priorities should be. And so the book is broken into the 4 sections of leadership that will lead you to an elevated company that lets you operate with congruence of heart and habit, enable people to be the best version of themselves. That chapter is called Be the Person I Raised You to Be. That's about getting rid of extra rules, trusting your people, honoring their words, giving them the ability to make the call, all of those things that we see in the best companies, and we can tell that about it when we interact with them. The second chapter is about the 8 common, most crazy things that make it hard to do business with us. That chapter is called Don't Make Me Feed You Soap. Great momism. I don't know how many people remember getting fed soap, but it's funny when I do that on stage, a lot of people seem to remember that. The third chapter gets back to what we just talked about, which is if you don't reorient your operation around customers' goals, what you won't recognize is that the paradoxical nature of growth is you will achieve your goals when you let your customers and enable them to achieve their own. That's the most elevated way to grow. And so that chapter is called Put Others Before Yourself. And then the fourth chapter gets into that, all those inadvertently, again, things that seep into our business that make us have a little bit of an ick factor when we work with companies. Do you love cracking open an $8 bottle of water in a hotel when we used to go or whatever? Those things that financially get put on a spreadsheet because it makes sense at the time, but just gets in the way of your impression of a company and its people, or the policies that pen you in. In fact, what we're seeing, and that chapter is called Take the High Road. It's the connection to leadership bravery that you see on the top of my website. What we're seeing during COVID is also this wonderful understanding that leadership bravery and getting rid of our payment terms has to happen now. What we require people to do, rules that pen them in, relaxing cancellation, all of those things that normally you'd have to do a tussle with or elevate inside an organization. We're realizing we got to take care of people.
Yeah, I like that, Jeanne. We actually, the call center I used to run, talked about it at the initial interview to even become a call center agent, at remembering what it was like to not only be the customer, but then to imagine if the customer on the phone was a parent, a grandparent, a child. How would you want that member of your family treated? Make sure you're treating your customer the same way.
That's right. Yeah. And so that's why I wrote that book. It's got 32 case studies. It's a very evaluative, but mostly consumable. You can take that thing and build a whole roadmap. There's a quiz at the end of it, and a lot of the notions of that quiz are on my website now that you could take very easily. And so I wanted to just simplify it for people and make it fun too. So I hired a cartoonist. There's cartoons all the way throughout it as well.
Perfect. That's great. So, Jeanne, I'm conscious of time. We have enough time for one more question, and I think this is one that's very dear to your heart. Can you explain what's your 3 blocks long for our listeners?
Sure. So I go from the mom to this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can tell a little bit about my childhood. I learned about humanity and business by watching my dad in his Buster Brown shoe store in Des Plaines, Illinois. He was the guy who put the very first pair of shoes on, people's little ones' feet, guiding the moms to the right shoe versus the one with the flashy bells or whatever, to make sure that developmentally they were getting the right shoe. And he took care of the whole life, not just the shoe. And he put your first ballet shoes on and your prom shoes. And he shoed a generation of children and their children's children. And he earned what we should all be striving to earn in this work, which is to become a part of the story of people's lives at that point when they need you to help them achieve their goals. So much so that when my dad, Vincenzo Giuseppe Cristando Lombardo, retired, a line of people 3 blocks long stood to say goodbye to him, that buying shoes would never be the same, and they couldn't imagine that without him. And so that's a shorthand. How do you want to be remembered? What's your 3 blocks long? And this is a metaphor for what I keep talking about, which is this is the missing work in over 90% of these efforts. You need to know it. What are customers' goals? How will you behave in achieving them? How do you want to be defined as people? Okay, then build it. Translate that to your operating model, and then live it in how you lead.
Excellent. What a perfect way to end our conversation. Let me let people know where they can get in touch with you. You can always connect to Jeanne Bliss on LinkedIn. You can go to her website, www.customerbliss.com, or you can go and find her books, the Chief Customer Officer 2.0. Would you do that to your mother? And I Love You More Than My Dog. We almost forgot that one too.
Yeah, weird titles, right?
I
They're
like it.
they're perfect. They're perfect. Jeanne, thank you very much for joining us today. It has been a real pleasure for us, and we hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Thank you both, and it's a joy to speak with you.
Thank you, Jeanne.
Well, this is